poor girl used the car window as a mirror to fix her bra, and the millionaire, seeing her, fell in love at first sight. Before the story begins, leave a comment below. Where are you watching from? Enjoy the story, everyone. Alice Park ran through the streets, clutching her crumpled resume in one hand, her heart racing like a Formula One car. She was late for the most important interview of her life. If I miss this interview, I'll have to sell my kidneys. And worse, I don't even know how much a used kidney is worth, she muttered, breathless, stumbling along the way. But there she was, just a few steps from the company. All she needed to do was take a deep breath and look like someone whose life was at least somewhat in order. That's when she saw it, a sleek black car parked in front of the building. Tinted windows, and a perfect reflection. Great, a first-class mirror, she murmured, stopping right in front of the passenger window. With quick movements, she started adjusting her bra inside her blouse, twisting her body like an Olympic gymnast. Then she pulled out her lipstick, applied it with full concentration, and then she smiled to check the result. And froze. A big, bright piece of lettuce was stuck between her teeth. Seriously? She groaned. Panicked, she tried to remove the intruder with her finger, making a face worthy of a comedy movie. And then it happened. The soft hum of the window rolling down. Slowly, Alice froze, hand still in her mouth, eyes wide open. Inside the car, an absurdly handsome man stared at her. Perfect hair, sharp suit, and that expression that clearly said, "I saw everything, from start to finish." "Need help with that, or would you prefer a professional mirror?" he asked, his voice calm, slightly amused. Alice blinked. Twice, her mind screamed run. Her legs for some reason stayed glued to the ground. She wiped her fingers on her pants, lifted her chin, and replied, "Let me know if you find my dignity anywhere. I think I dropped it somewhere in the middle of this humiliation." The man chuckled. Just a little, just enough for his eyes to shine. She blushed to the core. "Well, the window was staring at me first. So you decided to seduce it with lipstick and bra adjustments?" "It was an accident. I don't usually adjust my bra in random cars." "Sounds like a case of a broken mirror. And a salad. And the universe conspiring against you." He rested his arm on the window frame. "The universe is responsible for a lot of things, but in this case, I think it was just the lettuce." Alice huffed. "Look, I have to go. I have a job interview. A serious one. A life-changing one." "Well, if you make half the impression in there that you did out here, you might as well ask for a promotion already." Before he could say another word, Alice checked the time, gasped and shouted, "I'm late," before dashing toward the entrance. "And you, Mr. Owner of his own car, good luck with your movie star face." He gave a small salute. "Amuse, you got this. Miss Bra Emergency." She disappeared into the building like a hurricane of wrinkled blazer and shattered dignity. On the interview floor, she took a deep breath and tried to collect herself. The receptionist greeted her with a warm smile. "You may go in, Miss Park. Mr. Smith will be with you shortly, all right?" "Of course," she smiled, still a little dazed. "I've never been more emotionally stable in my life." She stepped into the conference room. Modern. All glass. She perched on the edge of the chair, her heart still pounding like a drumline in a parade. Then the door opened. Alice turned with a practiced smile, and froze. Nicholas Smith walked in as if he were strutting down a runway of pure confidence. Impeccable suit, tablet in hand, and that same teasing smile at the corner of his lips. Alice choked on her own breath. "Literally. You," she shrieked, jumping up so fast she almost knocked over her chair. He looked at her, feigning surprise. "Me? Were you expecting someone else? You're the CEO? And you're the lady with the lipstick and the lettuce." "I want to disappear," Alice muttered, covering her face. "Relax. I don't judge too much." He sat down smoothly. "Make yourself comfortable, but if you need to adjust anything else, please give me a heads up, just so I don't get startled." "This is a nightmare. I must be dreaming. That's the only explanation." "Welcome to your interview, Miss Park. Don't worry, whatever you do now, it won't be weirder than what happened outside." Alice sank into the chair. "Is it too late to jump out the window?" Nicholas smiled as he opened her resume. "I'd close the window before you try. You seem dangerous." Alice was convinced that the universe had a questionable sense of humor, and a cruel one. She was sitting in front of the most handsome, most elegant man, who was now officially her new boss, after publicly embarrassing herself right in front of his car. Nicholas Smith skimmed through her resume with narrowed eyes as if analyzing each line for signs of insanity. So, Alice Park, degree in business administration, a technical course in marketing, experience as a financial assistant in 2 places. He looked up, and no mention of sidewalk acrobatics or spontaneous stand-up performances through car windows. Alice smiled nervously. I'm still updating that section of my resume. I thought about adding street performer as a side gig, but it felt too informal. Oh, what a shame. I would have hired you just for that. Nicholas crossed his arms, leaning against the desk. Have you ever worked with technology before? Yes, I have. I turned on the microwave yesterday and it worked. Cutting-edge technology. He laughed, shaking his head slightly. We're off to a good start. Now tell me, why do you want to work here? Alice took a deep breath. She could switch to serious interview mode now, but honestly, there wasn't much left to lose. Dignity? That had already vanished on the sidewalk. Because I'm good. Even coming from a place where no one bets on you, even without a Harvard degree or connections at fancy dinners, I work hard. I don't give up. And if someone gives me a chance, I make it count. Nicholas's smile faded for a moment. He looked at Alice differently now, not with amusement, but as if he had heard more than he expected. That was honest and rare, he said. I can lie too if you'd prefer. I'm great at it. Alice sat up straighter. For example, I'm completely calm right now, and definitely not thinking about escaping through that window over there. Nicholas let out a quiet chuckle. I like people who don't hide behind scripted answers, but I also like testing limits. Alice frowned. Testing? Limits? He twirled his pen between his fingers, looking at her with a playful gleam in his eyes. For example, what if I told you that someone in this room already has an opinion about you? She raised an eyebrow. I'd ask if that opinion includes clumsy, talkative, and mildly traumatized by lettuce. And what if I told you it includes authentic, unpredictable, and strangely interesting? Alice's heart skipped a beat, or 2. She tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come out. So she took a deep breath, adjusted her hair, and said, I'd say that person has questionable taste, but excellent judgment. Nicholas smiled fully now. He closed the resume slowly. Miss Park, I think we'll be seeing each other again, very soon. Alice blinked, surprised. What do you mean? Is it over already? I've seen everything I needed to see. He stood up gracefully. And I can assure you, you've passed the hardest part of this interview. You're hired. What part? Being yourself, even when everything goes wrong. Alice stared at him, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or run before he changed his mind. Well? Thank you, Mr. Smith. Nicholas, just Nicholas, for now. She nodded, still confused, standing up slowly. As she left the room, she could still feel his gaze on her back. Not one of judgment, but of genuine interest. When the door closed, Alice leaned against the hallway wall, taking a deep breath. She ran a hand over her face, unable to believe what had just happened. Most unexpected interview in history? Without a doubt. But also, maybe the most important one of her life. The alarm went off at 6 in the morning, but Alice had already been awake 10 minutes earlier, staring at the ceiling of the small rented room she shared with the daughter of an elderly woman who talked to her cat as if he were human. First day, she thought. And her heart beat faster. She took a shower, pinned her hair back with a crooked clip, and put on the only white shirt that didn't have sauce stains. She ran her hands over her dress pants, trying to smooth out the deep creases from being folded in the drawer for too long. She looked at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror. All set, you have a functional appearance, she told herself. And now you work at a fancy tech company. Look at you, Alice Park. Almost an executive. Almost. On her way to the company, she got bumped twice on the subway and had half a cup of coffee spilled on her blouse, courtesy of a rushed passenger. It's fine, she thought. It's just coffee. It matches my mood. At the reception desk of NewGen Corp, she was greeted by a friendly assistant who led her to the department where she would start as an administrative assistant for the development team. The floor was sleek and modern, with glass walls, ergonomic chairs, and people dressed as if they were always heading to an important event. Alice walked in slowly, trying to look confident. Her new badge gleamed as it hung around her neck. Hi everyone, I'm Alice. 3 heads turned, 2 shy smiles, a polite nod. Then, one of her colleagues stepped forward holding a cup of tea. Alice Park, right? I'm Emily. Welcome to the jungle. Thanks. I just hope I make it through the week. Emily laughed. With that resume and the whole car window incident, you're already a legend around here. Alice's eyes widened. Already? How did you? Emily nodded toward the side. Someone on the third floor saw everything reflected in the glass. They said you were putting on lipstick, adjusting your bra, and, well, you know the rest. The story spread through half the company before lunch. Alice groaned. Great. First day, and I'm already office folklore. Oh, but you're a charming character. Emily winked. Come on, let me show you your desk. Alice's workstation was between an artificial plant and a noisy printer. It wasn't the CEO floor, but it was her own little space. And that was enough. A little while later, Nicholas Smith walked down the hall, impeccable black blazer, phone to his ear, purposeful stride. He paused briefly when he saw Alice. Watch out for the coffee, and the lettuce too. Alice's eyes widened and she choked on the water she was drinking. Emily nearly spit out her tea. Miss Lettuce? She whispered as Nicholas disappeared down the hall. Oh, please, no. But it was too late. The news spread like Wi-Fi, and before lunchtime, a sticky note was attached to her desk with Miss Lettuce written on it, along with a doodle of a bra. I knew I shouldn't have gotten out of bed today, Alice muttered, dropping her head onto her desk. Relax, Emily said, laughing. Everyone gets a nickname sooner or later. You were just more efficient. The afternoon was filled with online training and a flood of technical information. Alice did her best to keep up, even though her brain was begging for mercy with each new spreadsheet. At the end of the day, she was filling out a report when a calendar notification popped up. Investor presentation, mandatory attendance. Location Auditorium B, accompanied by A Park. She read it again and again. Emily, who scheduled this? Let me check. Emily clicked around on her computer. Huh? It was Nicholas Smith himself. Alice felt her stomach turn. Me? In an investor presentation? On my first day? Looks like he has faith in you, or wants to see me trip on stage and go viral on LinkedIn. On the way to the auditorium, she tried to stay focused. Breathe. Pretend she wasn't about to be thrown to the sharks. Nicholas was waiting at the entrance. Alice, punctual. That's rare around here. Hi, so... You really want me in this presentation with you? I like surprises. You're good at them. I usually don't do presentations. I sit in the back and eat cookies. Today you're trading cookies for the front of the stage. Just follow along, observe. You don't have to say anything, unless you want to. Alice took a deep breath. Okay, but if I pass out, I expect hazard pay. They walked into the auditorium. Executives and investors filled the room, all dressed as if they had stepped out of an expensive magazine. Nicholas presented the project confidently, but at one point there was an awkward silence after an unexpected question about how younger audiences would respond to the product. Nicholas turned to Alice. Any thoughts? Alice froze. All eyes were on her. Maybe using humor and real-life situations in the marketing. Show that technology isn't just for experts, but also for people who feel like hackers just by using a microwave. A few chuckles spread through the room. Someone nodded. Another person commented, good point. Nicholas gave a subtle smile, as if to say, I knew it. As they left the auditorium, he remarked, Congratulations, you survived your first day. Just barely, but I survived. And you even got a nickname. That will haunt me forever. Maybe it'll become your trademark. Alice laughed, and for the first time that day, she felt like she truly belonged. Alice Park woke up feeling like her brain was still in sleep mode. Her body, however, seemed to have already switched to emergency mode, as if sensing that the day ahead would be full of surprises. She sat up in bed, glanced at her phone, and let out a dramatic sigh. Second day of work, and I still have a job. Is this a miracle or a clerical error? She got up, brushed her teeth, and put on her best pair of dress pants, the least wrinkled ones, and a beige blouse with slightly uneven buttons but plenty of personality. She slipped on the only pair of heels she had that were still in one piece, tied her hair back, and applied a more subtle shade of lipstick. No lettuce, no surprises, no disasters today, she thought. Let's play a little game with those who only read the comments. Type pizza in the comments. Only those who made it this far will understand. Now let's get back to the story. As soon as she arrived at Nugent Corp, the receptionist recognized her with a smile and a quick nod. Alice responded with an awkward wave and headed straight to her department. Emily was already there, leaning over a spreadsheet and chewing on a protein bar like it was cardboard. "Survived the initiation, Miss Lettuce?" Emily asked without looking away from the screen. "Barely, but I'm alive." "Great, because there's an important meeting today. And apparently you've been called in to attend. Again." Alice stopped in the middle of the hallway. "You're kidding. Another presentation?" "Not exactly. Today is a big alignment meeting with investors and strategic partners. The kind where everyone pretends they know what they're doing and prays they don't get called on." Alice's eyes widened. "And I was picked. Why?" "Rumor has it Nicholas liked your down-to-earth touch in the last presentation. He wants to see if you can do it again, but with less improvisation and more composure." "I don't even know what composure is before 10 in the morning. Then grab some coffee, freshen up, and pretend you were born ready." Alice tried to laugh, but her stomach was already in knots. She went to the office kitchen, grabbed a cup of coffee, and returned to her desk where an email was waiting for her. "Executive meeting, 10 a.m. on the 25th floor. Dress code, confidence." "Dress code, confidence?" she muttered. "Can I rent that by the hour?" 20 minutes before the meeting, Alice went to the bathroom for a final touch-up. She fixed her hair, checked her teeth, no veggies stuck, thank God, and took a deep breath. As she stepped out, her heels clicked confidently against the shiny floor, until a loud snap echoed through the hallway. She froze, looked down at her right foot. The heel had snapped off, not slightly bent, not cracked, completely broken like it had been chewed up by a wild animal. "No, not now." She whispered, one hand on the wall, the other on her forehead. She looked around for help. Nothing. The hallway was empty. She tried walking on the side of her foot, but she looked like a drunken penguin. Back to the bathroom. She rummaged through her emergency stash, found a hair tie, a coin, and duct tape. "God, if this works, I swear I'll never buy thrift store heels again." She knelt down, pulled off the broken heel, taped it up, reinforced it with the hair tie, and prayed it looked intentional. The result? It looked like a 5-year-old had wrapped her shoe in toilet paper. But at least she could walk. 3 minutes late, Alice stepped into the elevator and hit the button for the 25th floor. The doors began to close, when, just like in a movie, a hand shot in to stop them. Nicholas Smith stepped in. Dark gray suit, crisp white shirt, serious expression, a faint scent of expensive coffee and embedded sarcasm. "Miss Park. Always on time. Adding your own dramatic flair to the entrance, I see." Alice forced a smile. "Style is everything, Mr. Smith." He glanced down at her shoe, raised an eyebrow. "Is that duct tape?" "It's creativity and survival, two very important skills in a corporate environment." Nicholas chuckled, shaking his head. "You're definitely not from HR, and you're definitely not from planet Earth." The elevator rode up in silence for a few seconds. The tension was oddly light, amusing even. As they reached their floor, Nicholas turned to her before stepping out. "Try not to slip on stage. Investors don't usually enjoy acrobatics. Unless I do it in slow motion." They entered the conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a panoramic city view, an oval table, sparkling water, and sugar-free biscuits. Alice sat next to Nicholas, trying not to show that her sock was sticking to the duct tape. The meeting began. Data, charts, growth projections, discussions on innovation and goals. Alice took notes, even though half the terms sounded like a foreign language. Then, it was time to present a new project focused on user experience. Nicholas turned to her. "Alice, would you like to share what we discussed about audience perception?" She didn't remember any such discussion. This was clearly a setup for an improvised response. But she took a deep breath, stood up, careful not to make noise with her Frankenstein shoe, and smiled. "Well, what we've noticed is that people want to feel like they're part of the process. They want something easy, intuitive, but also human. Something that doesn't feel like it was made only for people who say cloud computing effortlessly." A few chuckles, some nods. "Our idea is to create a lighter interface, with simple language and a design that feels welcoming. Like an app that says everything's fine, take a deep breath, and click here." The investors laughed. One of them, wearing a beige suit and with silver hair, even commented, "Finally someone who speaks our language." Alice sat back down, her heart racing. Nicholas simply said, "Excellent." After the meeting, as everyone was leaving, he walked up to her. "You know you stole the show, right? I hope it wasn't because of my shoes. That too, but mostly because you made everyone understand something complex in such a simple way. It's a gift, the same one that makes me choose bad coffee and even worse shoes." Nicholas looked at her for a moment longer than necessary. His expression was almost soft. "Do you have plans tonight?" Alice blinked, twice, 3 times. "Is this an invitation?" "A professional one. The executive team is having dinner with some partners. I thought it would be good for you to come. But, of course, change your shoes first." She laughed. "As long as I don't trip on the way there, sure. Just tell me if the menu includes all-you-can-eat sushi or more graphs. I'll send you the details by email." "And Alice." She turned around. "Thanks for today, really." Alice walked to the elevator with her patched-up shoe and a heart beating as fast as the tape holding it together, already worrying about what to wear to such an elegant dinner. Alice stood in her room, staring at her closet like it was a multiple-choice quiz where all the answers were wrong. Black, because it's slimming. Plain, so it doesn't draw attention. Long, because I forgot to shave my legs. She pulled out the only black dress that still fit without requiring a miracle or a miracle worker. She slipped on a pair of flats that had danced more than she had at every wedding she'd ever attended and applied her lipstick with the precision of someone drawing a map. Her phone buzzed. It was the email with the dinner details. French restaurant, 8 o'clock. Dress code, formal. And one important note. "No duct tape, please." "All right, no duct tape. But if my shoe falls apart again, I'll have to hold it together with a prayer." At the subway station, Alice rode the escalator with the grace of someone who almost tripped twice. She walked 3 blocks to the restaurant, dodging a puddle, an elderly woman with a shopping cart, and a skateboarder who nearly ran her over. When she saw the restaurant's facade, she held her breath. It looked like something straight out of a French movie. Dim lighting, people wearing coats that cost as much as her rent, and a waiter at the door who seemed like he'd just won a posture competition. "Good evening. How may I help you?" he asked, with an accent that had to have been perfected by watching Louvre documentaries. Yes, I'm with Nicholas Smith's group." Alice tried to sound sophisticated, but the backpack on her shoulders wasn't helping. "Mr. Smith's guest?" "Guest? No. Employee. A salaried one, I swear. I only accompany him in meetings, I promise." The waiter didn't react. He just nodded and led her to a table in the back. Alice adjusted her dress as she walked, trying not to trip on the plush carpet. And then she saw Nicholas, alone, sitting there, wearing a perfectly tailored blazer, holding a glass of wine, and looking like the kind of person who picks wine just because it has a fancy French name. "Where's the team?" she asked, standing there as if she'd just walked into a prank. "They canceled, last minute." "All of them? Remarkable coincidence, isn't it?" Just like when you trip and fall right into your crush's arms. Totally unplanned." Nicholas smiled. "Have a seat, Alice. It's just a work dinner, with cloth napkins and a waiter who silently judges you." Alice sat down, adjusting the chair, which seemed to have been designed by someone who had never actually sat in one. "Just a work dinner. In a restaurant where the menu doesn't have prices. This never ends well. Relax. If something is too expensive, we'll just pretend it tastes bad." The waiter returned with the menu. "Good evening. Would you like something to drink?" "Sparkling water and a side of dignity, please," Alice said. Nicholas couldn't hold back his laughter. "Red wine for me? And for her?" "Just regular water. The sparkling kind gives me hiccups. And embarrassment." The waiter left with a neutral expression. Alice picked up the menu and widened her eyes. Everything was in French. Everything was in fine print. Everything looked suspicious. "What's this? Foie gras? Duck liver. And this confit de canard? Duck again, but now it's confit. Don't ask me how." So basically the duck dies twice and still ends up as both the appetizer and the main course. Someone needs to tell this duck he's sacrificing way too much. They laughed. The waiter returned. Alice pointed to the first dish with a name she could pronounce. "I'll have this one. The croquet monsieur." "Ah, a classic. A French sandwich. Fancy name, but it's just bread and cheese." "Perfect. That I can understand." With the food served, they both started eating, trying to maintain some level of composure. Nicholas handled his fork like a scalpel. Alice, more like a shovel. So, Nicholas, why me? I mean, why do you invite me to these dinners? I'm starting to feel like some kind of social experiment. You're different? Is that corporate code for weird? No, it's my polite way of saying you do things like this. He gestured toward her. Like dropping your napkin 3 times and trying to hide it with your foot. Alice blushed. I'm practical. I use my feet as an extension of my arms. It's evolution, not clumsiness. And yet you managed to impress a room full of investors yesterday. I thought they were going to throw me out the window. They almost gave you a standing ovation. Probably because they thought I'd explode if they didn't. Or because you talk to them like real people. And that, well, that's something a lot of meetings lack. You have a rare skill. Stammering and covering it up with jokes? Exactly. Alice laughed, wiping the corners of her mouth. And you? Have you always been like this? Calm, CEO-like, sophisticated, with hair that looks straight out of a fancy shampoo ad? Oh, absolutely. I was born wearing a blazer with a business plan under my arm. Liar. You look like someone who was a total bookworm in school. I was the kid who corrected the teacher. Wow, I was the one who copied from classmates and still got it wrong. Amazing how we ended up having dinner together. That's the power of networking, or pure chaos. The waiter arrived with dessert, a chocolate creation so perfect that Alice went silent for 5 whole seconds. Is this real? Or just for taking pictures? Just don't press too hard. If it falls apart, they might charge you for a Picasso. Alice picked up her spoon with a surgeon's precision. If it collapses, just say it was an emotional earthquake. Nicholas laughed, and she, feeling a little shy, smiled back. The atmosphere was light, comfortable, almost like being with an old friend who happened to be absurdly handsome, well-groomed, and rich. But still, a friend. When they left the restaurant, the night air was crisp. Alice shivered slightly from the breeze. Nicholas took off his jacket and offered it, but she shook her head. Thanks, but I'd probably sweat from panic just wearing that. It's just a jacket. It doesn't bite. But it costs more than my entire wardrobe, and I have a fear of expensive things. Why? Because expensive things are fragile. Like stilettos, like hearts with a crush on the boss. Nicholas looked at her for a second longer than usual, but didn't say anything. He just smiled. Want me to call you a car? I'm taking the subway. Reality awaits. I can walk you to the station. Only if you don't complain about the subway smell. Only if you don't let me touch the handrails. Those have more DNA than a forensic lab. They laughed together and started walking. The street was quiet, lit by old-fashioned streetlights and glowing storefronts on the other side of the sidewalk. Along the way, they passed a store window with ridiculous mannequins. One was wearing a fur coat with shorts. What is this? Post-apocalyptic fashion? Alice commented. Looks like the mannequin had a fight with the seasons. They reached the subway entrance. Alice stopped and turned to him. That was nice. Strangely nice. That was the weirdest dinner I've had all year. Don't you go out much? Only when I have unpredictable company with a good sense of humor and a talent for disasters. So you like danger. Only the kind that comes with laughter at the end. Alice stepped down the first few stairs, then turned back. Nicholas? Yes? If I trip in the lobby tomorrow, will you fire me? Only if you do it with style. Alice went down the stairs with light steps, feeling something different in the air. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the dinner. It was that kind of feeling that makes the heart lighter than a full stomach. Alice woke up before her alarm. And that was never a good sign. She turned her face into the pillow and remembered the email from the real estate agency she had received the night before. The subject line read, "Final notice before legal action." She read it 3 times, and still didn't like it. Her bank account was so empty that the app kept freezing. Okay, universe, I get it. You can stop testing me now. She got up, put on a clean pair of jeans and a black blouse, and tied her hair back in the most practical way possible. She poured some coffee into a travel mug, or more like a mix of coffee and sheer willpower, and rushed out the door. On the subway ride to Manhattan, her mind was elsewhere. At the turnstile, she nearly forgot to swipe her card. And when she got to the office, she made her way to her desk on autopilot. Emily waved at her with a bagel in hand. Hey, Miss Lettuce. Sleep well? Sleep? What's that? What's that? Emily smirked and pointed at her computer screen. You have a meeting with Nicholas at 10. Alice nodded and thought, if he fires me, at least I'll save on subway fare. When Alice walked into Nicholas's office, he was looking through some papers and drinking coffee without sugar, which, in her opinion, should be a crime. Good morning, Alice. Have a seat. I have something to show you. She sat down, trying not to look too concerned. I'm listening. I want you to take charge of a special project. It's something that's been on hold but has a lot of potential. Alice took the folder he handed her. She read the first few lines. There were numbers, graphs, and words she had to read twice. This is complex. It is. But you have the right approach. You're direct, creative, quick, and different. Alice looked at him surprised. Me? Really? Yes, you. But there's a catch. It'll take extra time. You may have to stay late. Does it come with extra pay? Nicholas nodded. It does. You'll be compensated. That's when Alice felt a small wave of relief. I'll do it. She tried to hide her relief, but Nicholas noticed. Is everything okay? He asked. Alice hesitated. More or less, just some personal stuff. He simply said, if you need anything, let me know. She nodded, left his office, and went straight to her computer. She spent the rest of the day focused, sketching ideas and writing so fast she almost tore the paper. Meanwhile, her phone kept vibrating with messages from the real estate office. You need to resolve your situation by tomorrow. She read it, locked the screen, and went to get some water. But her mouth still felt dry. By the end of the workday, the office was nearly empty. Emily walked over with 2 chocolates in hand. You're still here? New project. Are you planning to sleep here? I'm seriously considering it. Emily placed a chocolate on her desk. At least eat this. It helps keep your mood in check. Alice laughed. Thanks, you're a lifesaver. After Emily left, Alice decided to show Nicholas her progress. She took the papers to his office, knocked, and walked in. I put together a rough draft of my ideas. It's still in the early stages, but let me see. Nicholas read carefully, made a few short comments, and nodded. This is really good. You understand people, and that's rarer than you'd think. Alice forced a smile, but her mind was elsewhere. Nicholas noticed. Do you want to tell me what's going on? Alice sighed. Then she just said it. I'm about to be evicted. I have until tomorrow to pay the rent, but my salary isn't enough. And, well, that's it. Nicholas didn't seem surprised. He simply took a blue folder from his drawer. The company has a support program for situations like this. It's discreet and temporary. It's not charity. It's help for people who are working hard. Alice held the folder like it weighed a ton. I don't know if I can accept this. Why not? Because it hurts. It feels like I'm failing. Accepting help isn't failing. It's just living with a little less weight on your shoulders. Silence. She closed the folder. Can I think about it? Of course. But think carefully. That night, Alice got home with aching feet and a spinning head. She opened the folder, read everything, and realized it could cover her rent and a few small bills. It wasn't permanent, just a breather. All right, I'll take the breather. The next day, she arrived early. She went straight to Nicholas's office, folder in hand. Good morning. Good morning. I thought about it, and I accept. Nicholas nodded. Everything will be fine. Thank you. Now get back to work. We have a tight deadline. Alice smiled and left. Her steps felt lighter, and for the first time that week, she didn't feel as alone as she thought she was. On Monday, Alice arrived at work full of ideas and a small feeling that maybe she could change something, even if it was just the background color of the presentation slides. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and took a deep breath. She had decided to structure the project the way she would want to understand it. Clear, to the point, and with simple examples. As she typed, she chuckled at some of the comparisons she came up with. Using this system should be as easy as making instant noodles. 3 steps and you're done, she murmured, taking notes. Emily walked by with a water bottle. Talking to yourself already? Only when I have good ideas. Then I hope you start giving lectures. Alice spent the day working on a different kind of presentation. Less technical, more practical. She mixed simple graphs with natural, conversational phrases. She swapped out complicated words for everyday comparisons. The more she worked, the more it made sense. In the afternoon, Nicholas appeared beside her desk. You look focused. I am, but this is just the first draft. Can I see? She turned the screen toward him. Nicholas read it carefully, then looked at her. "This is excellent, really." Alice smiled, a little surprised. "I thought you'd find it too informal." "That's exactly what makes it good. It's clear, direct, and builds confidence." He paused. "I want you to come with me to present this at the technology fair in Chicago." Alice blinked. "A fair? In another state?" "Yes, the company has a booth there. I think your proposal will stand out. You have a different way of explaining things, and that's rare." She was silent for a few seconds. "I've never traveled for work before." "This will be your first time, and we'll make it work." The week flew by. Alice was nervous but also excited. Emily lent her a small bag and gave her some tips. "Just don't say into the microphone, okay?" "I promise I'll try." On Friday, Alice and Nicholas met at the airport. The flight was smooth. They talked about light topics like songs that get stuck in your head and airplane food. "Every time I order chicken, I regret it," she said. "Every time I order pasta, I get an apology." In Chicago, they went straight to the hotel. The next day, they headed to the fair venue. Alice ran through her presentation with the team. At first, her voice was shaky, but she quickly relaxed. She spoke clearly, used simple examples, and saw several team members smiling. Nicholas stood by, just observing. Later, one of the technical leads commented, "She has a knack for this. People understand her and actually pay attention." Alice pretended not to hear, but inside she was thrilled. That evening, Nicholas invited her to dinner. Nothing formal, just to unwind after a good rehearsal. "As long as it's not a fancy restaurant, I'm still traumatized by that French place." "Deal." They found a simple spot nearby. They ate something quick, talked about the event, what could go wrong, and laughed about it. "If I forget a part tomorrow, can I improvise?" she asked. "You can. Just don't bring up instant noodles on stage." "Come on, that's my best comparison." "We'll save it for next time." They walked back to the hotel at a slow pace. It was cold, and Alice crossed her arms. "I should have brought a thicker coat. Want mine?" "No, then you'll freeze, and it'll be my fault." They reached the hotel entrance. Nicholas held the door for her. "Getting some rest?" "Yeah, if I don't sleep, I'll mix everything up tomorrow." "You'll do great. If I trip on stage, I'll pretend it was part of the plan. I'll be ready with the applause." Alice smiled and stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, she let out a small sigh. Tomorrow was the big day, but for the first time, she didn't want to run away. Alice woke up with her heart racing. She checked her phone. 7 a.m. She had dreamed she was on stage, accidentally speaking French, and the microphone was off. She woke up in the middle of saying croissant of data. She stretched slowly, got up, took a shower, and spent a moment staring at the mirror, as if it could give her advice. It didn't. So she spoke to herself instead. "It'll be fine. You practiced, and no one here knows you trip over your own feet." She went downstairs for breakfast and found Nicholas already seated, drinking coffee with a notebook beside him. She grabbed some bread and sat down. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "I dreamed I was a high-tech sleeping beauty, but with slides." "At least you got some sleep." "More or less, but I'm ready, I think." Nicholas smiled. "It'll be fine. You'll do great." "Promise you won't leave me alone on stage?" "Promise, unless the stage collapses." "Great, I feel so safe now." Later, they arrived at the fair. The venue was crowded, but their presentation was in a reserved room. Alice went over everything one last time. She skimmed through her slides, took a deep breath. When the time came, Nicholas did the introduction and then handed it over to her. Alice started with a slight tremor in her voice, but soon found her rhythm. She used simple examples, explained things calmly, and people laughed at the right moments. She saw some taking notes, others nodding along. Everything seemed to flow. At the end, they answered questions. One attendee praised the clarity of her explanation. Another said they had never understood the topic so well before. After they left the room, Nicholas turned to her. "You were amazing," Alice smiled. "I didn't faint. That's already a win. And you even got a tech guy to laugh. That's rare." "He laughed? Really? I thought he was having back pain." Nicholas chuckled. "Trust me, you did great." They spent the rest of the day talking to people at the fair, exchanging contacts, and gathering feedback. In the afternoon, they went back to the hotel to rest before dinner with part of the company team. Alice walked into her room, dropped her bag on a chair, and collapsed onto the bed. She grabbed her phone and sent a message to Emily about how it went. The presentation was a success. I'm still alive. I didn't trip. Nicholas smiled 3 times. Is this a miracle? Emily replied, of course it's a miracle and a sign. Enjoy this moment. After resting for a bit, Alice went down to the lobby. She found Nicholas waiting near the elevator. Ready for dinner? He asked. Hungry? Yes. Socially energized? Maybe. They stepped into the elevator, just the 2 of them. Silence settled in quickly, not an uncomfortable silence, but the kind that changes the air. Alice glanced at the numbers on the panel. Nicholas remained quiet for a few seconds before speaking. I'm proud of you today. Thank you. You helped me believe I could do it. It wasn't help, I just saw what was already there. Alice looked away for a moment, then turned back to Nicholas. He looked at her too. They both smiled, but in a different way this time. The elevator suddenly stopped. Alice's eyes widened. Was that what I think it was? Yes. Looks like it's stuck. Is this some kind of joke from the universe? Maybe the universe likes playing with you. Alice let out a nervous laugh. All that's missing now is the lights going out. The lights flickered off for 2 seconds, then came back on. You've got to be kidding me, she muttered. Nicholas reached for the emergency button and pressed it. A voice answered from the other side, assuring them that the issue was being resolved. Well, we're stuck, he said, leaning against the wall. Alice took a deep breath. Okay, no panic. I just have to pretend this is normal. Think of it as a dramatic pause in a movie. And you're the mysterious character? And you're the main character who talks too much when she's nervous. Not wrong. She looked at him. He looked back. This really does feel like a movie, she said. All that's missing is the kiss. Should we make this movie real? Nicholas asked. Alice went silent, turning red like a tomato. They stared at each other for a few seconds. Nicholas took a step closer. Alice felt her heart race, and that's when the elevator started moving again, with a small jolt. Of course, right now, she said, looking up at the ceiling. Nicholas laughed. The universe didn't want the cliché. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened. They walked out side by side, in silence. But both were smiling. Alice spoke first. So, should we pretend nothing happened? I'm not sure I want to pretend, but we can save that thought for after dinner. Deal. They left the hotel and headed to the restaurant. The night felt lighter, as if everything had taken on a new tone. And deep down, Alice knew that Almost Kiss wasn't really over. The flight back to New York was quiet, but not the bad kind of quiet. It was the comfortable kind, the kind when 2 people are thinking about the same things but aren't quite ready to say them out loud. Alice gazed out the airplane window. The clouds drifted by slowly. Inside her mind, everything felt fast. The presentation, the trip, the almost kiss in the elevator. It was all there, swirling together like a movie she was still processing. Nicholas, sitting beside her with headphones on, pretended to be watching a documentary. But every now and then, he glanced at her, and she knew. When the plane landed and they got a car back to the city, Alice tried to keep the conversation light. I need a week to process everything that happened. You can take 2 days off if you want. And miss the chance to find out if my nickname is still Miss Lettuce? Nicholas smiled. It's not going anywhere. That kind of thing doesn't change easily. At the entrance of the office building, Alice hesitated for a second before stepping inside. Should we just pretend it was a regular business trip? If that's what you want, sure. I'm not sure if I want that, but it's easier for now. Then it's a deal. On Monday, Alice returned to the office as if walking into familiar territory. But now, it felt like she had an invisible sign around her neck that read, "Being watched." It didn't take long to notice the looks. People whispering by the water cooler. Colleagues exchanging amused smiles when she walked by. Emily was the first to bring it up directly. I know everything. Alice didn't even need to ask. Everything about what exactly? That you and Nicholas got stuck in the elevator, and that there was almost a kiss. That story is spreading through the office like free coffee. Alice's eyes widened. What? How? Someone from the trip saw you two coming out of the elevator looking? Let's say, smiling. The news turned into a story. The story turned into office gossip. But no one saw anything. Nothing happened. But it could have happened. And that's even more interesting. Alice sighed. Great. Now I'm the main character of a corporate rumor. At least you're a likable main character. Alice tried to ignore it. She really did. But throughout the week she noticed the way her colleagues looked at her differently, as if she had leveled up without trying, and that made her uncomfortable. She didn't want to be remembered for a potential romance scene in an elevator. She wanted to be remembered for the project, for the presentation, for her work. And more than anything, she wanted to figure out what she was feeling. Nicholas seemed different too. He was still professional and attentive, but there was a new ease in their interactions. When they passed each other in the hallway, their eyes met for just a second longer. But they never talked about the trip, or the almost kiss. Until one day, after a long afternoon of meetings, Alice took the elevator alone. Nicholas stepped in just as the doors were closing. They stood there, in silence. Alice pressed the button for her floor. Nicholas kept his hands in his pockets. They avoided looking at each other, as if the small space between them was neutral ground. "I heard we're becoming an office legend," she said, breaking the silence. "I heard that too. And you're not going to say anything?" "I'd rather not add fuel to the rumors, but if you want, I can put out an official statement. Nothing happened in the elevator. Signed, the parties involved." Alice smiled. "I think that would only make people more curious." "Probably." Silence again. The doors opened. They stepped out together. "I need to talk to you later," Nicholas said. "About the project?" "That too." Alice just nodded. She walked back to her desk, her heart racing more than she wanted to admit. The next morning, Nicholas asked her to come to his office. Alice walked in, sat down, and waited. Nicholas closed his laptop and looked at her. "First, I want to thank you. The project was a success. The board approved the format. Your proposal will be implemented in the new campaign." "Really?" She smiled, surprised. "That's incredible." "And it's because of you. You made it work. You brought a new approach. And more than that, you got people's attention." Alice took a deep breath. "I'm happy to hear that. I really put in the effort. And one more thing," he continued, "about everything people have been saying, I don't want it to affect you or your reputation here." "It already is, a little." "How do you feel about that?" She thought for a moment, looked at him, confused. "I never imagined that. Well, that I'd care so much about what people say, but I do, and I don't want to just be the elevator girl." "You never were." "Really?" "Alice, you're one of the smartest and most creative people who've ever worked here. And that's not an exaggeration." She was silent for a moment. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." Nicholas nodded. "And if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here." Alice stood up. "Maybe one day, but right now I need to finish a report." "Of course." She left his office, her mind spinning. She had gotten everything she wanted: recognition, results, respect. But what she felt when she looked at Nicholas didn't fit into any report. That same day, Emily showed up at Alice's desk with a curious smile. "So, did he talk to you?" "He did, about the project and the rumors. And nothing. Everything stayed the same." Emily looked doubtful. "But is that what you wanted?" Alice sighed. "I don't know what I want. Sometimes you just need time, or a new elevator." Alice laughed. "For now, I think I'll take the stairs." Alice didn't know what was worse, the company's gala invitation or the fact that she had only 3 days to find something to wear. The invitation came by email, with elegant lettering and the word formal underlined. She read it 3 times to make sure it wasn't spam. Then she sighed and walked over to Emily's desk. "Did you see this?" "The gala? Of course. And before you ask, I already have a dress, booked a salon appointment, and picked out my nail color." "Of course you did? And you? Are you going?" "I don't know. The invitation is nice, but my bank account isn't." Emily gave her a determined look. "You're going, and you're wearing one of my dresses. But you're taller, and you know how to sew. You'll make it work." 3 days later, Alice was in the office bathroom struggling with the zipper of Emily's dress. It wasn't a perfect fit, but she could move, mostly. She looked at her shoes, a simple pair of heels she had saved for special occasions. The left heel already had a suspicious tilt, but it was all she had. "This will be fine," she told herself, staring into the mirror. "It's just a party, with music, fancy food, and people who make 3 times my salary. No big deal." When she arrived at the venue, it felt like stepping into a movie. There were lights everywhere, people chatting with drinks in hand, and soft instrumental music in the background. She walked carefully, trying to look natural and not trip over her own feet. Alice? She turned. It was Nicholas with a slight smile. She said, adjusting the strap of her dress. You look normal. I mean elegant, but normal for someone who's always elegant. Thank you, I think. You look different. In a good way. Alice gave a nervous smile. The dress is Emily's, and my heel might break at any moment. Then let's walk slowly. The two of them walked over to a table. They chatted with some team members, laughed at comments about the fair and the project, and tried to ignore the subtle glances. For most of the party, Alice stayed close to Nicholas, but without overdoing it. She watched the groups of executives, Nicholas's elegant ex-girlfriends who looked like they came straight out of magazines, and tried to stay confident. Emily showed up later, holding a drink and smiling. You're doing great. You haven't spilled anything. You haven't tripped. That's already a success. There's still half an hour left. A lot can go wrong. Relax, and don't worry. So far, everyone's only said good things about you. Alice glanced to the side. Nicholas was talking to two partners, but at that moment, he looked at her. Their eyes met for a second. She quickly looked away and took a deep breath. A little later, she felt something strange under her foot. Her left heel was wobbling more than it should. She tried to keep her composure, but when she took a small step to the side, she heard a snap. Oh no, she whispered. What is it? Emily asked. My heel gave out. It's crooked. Can you walk? Only if I waddle like a penguin. Come with me. Emily discreetly led her to a quiet corner of the garden next to the hall. There were fewer people there, and it felt calmer. Stay here. I'll see if I can find a spare pair of shoes with the event team. You're always so prepared. Somebody has to be. While she waited, Alice sat on a nearby bench, trying to hide her broken shoe and keep her dignity intact. That's when Nicholas appeared. Everything okay? More or less, my heel broke, literally. Do you need help making a run for it? If I leave now, I'd at least like to walk straight, but I don't think that's possible. Nicholas sat down beside her. I thought you were shining in there, and then you disappeared, because my shoe betrayed me, and I didn't want to become the talk of the night. I think you already are, but in a good way. She looked at him. Are you sure? I am. They sat in silence for a few seconds. The sounds of the party felt distant. Do you remember when we met? She asked. Of course, how could I forget? I was adjusting my bra in the reflection of your car window. And you had lettuce in your teeth. Why did you hire me again? Because you're exactly what this company needed, and maybe what I needed too. She stayed quiet. Her heart raced. Nicholas turned toward her. Alice? But before he could say anything else, Emily reappeared, holding a pair of flats. Mission accomplished. Alice stood up, took off her broken heels, and slipped on the flats with relief. You saved me. Always. Nicholas watched with a smile as Alice walked more confidently again. There. Now I can go back with dignity. Or dance, Nicholas suggested. I don't know if I'm ready for that. We just have to make it to the center of the dance floor. The rest, we can improvise. Alice hesitated for a second. All right, but if I step on your foot, blame the broken heel. They walked to the center of the room. The music had slowed down. Nicholas held out his hand. Alice hesitated, then took it. They started dancing slowly. No rehearsed steps, just two colleagues trying to keep in sync. This is starting to feel like one of those movie scenes, she said. All that's missing is the ending. Alice laughed but didn't say anything. She just kept dancing, her heart a little lighter, her gaze locked on his. And at that moment, nothing felt broken anymore. Not the heel, not her confidence. Maybe, for the first time, even her heart felt whole. The following Monday, Alice arrived at the office with the feeling that something had changed. But she wasn't sure what exactly. Maybe it was the way Nicholas looked at her when they said goodbye that night, or the way she couldn't stop thinking about the moment they danced together. Or maybe it was just the effect of wearing flats all night. She tried to focus on work. She answered emails, reviewed spreadsheets, and organized a new proposal. But every time Nicholas walked by, she froze. The words in her head got all mixed up. He's just your boss, she muttered to herself. A boss who dances well and knows how to give compliments without sounding forced. But still, just a boss. Emily noticed her odd behavior by the second day. You're avoiding me, aren't you? It's not you. It's my head. Is it Nicholas? Alice made a face. And if it is, did something happen after the party? Alice thought before answering. Not exactly, but everything felt too close. Literally. Emily gave her a knowing smile. So you're afraid you really like him? Maybe I already do, and maybe he doesn't see it the same way? And what has he done since the party? Nothing. No message, no note, no comment, like nothing ever happened. Sometimes silence says more than we want it to. In the days that followed, Alice started to pull away. Not on purpose. It was more of a defense mechanism. She stopped having lunch at the usual time. She began sending reports by email instead of delivering them in person. When she needed to talk to Nicholas, she kept the conversations short and to the point. Nicholas noticed, of course. But he didn't say anything either. Then, on a rainy Thursday morning, he walked into the room where Alice was meeting with the team and gave a short presentation to the entire department. He talked about the company's progress, the new projects, and then he said, "But none of this would have happened without a team that believes in simplicity, and without people who see beyond the rules." Alice looked at him. He was looking straight at her. Betting on people who don't fit the mold was the best decision we made this year, and we're going to keep doing it. Everyone applauded. Alice stood still for a few seconds, trying to process it. After the meeting, Emily pulled her aside. "That was for you, and everyone saw it." He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. But instead of feeling relieved, Alice felt even more confused. She didn't know what to do with that kind of public recognition. It sounded nice, of course, but it also felt incomplete. And then, as if the universe wanted to complicate things even more, that same afternoon she received an invitation to a conference in another city. She had been selected to represent the company, lead a panel, and speak about simple innovation. The invitation had been approved by the board. And by Nicholas. Alice walked into his office, holding the printed email in her hands. "Did you know about this?" "I did. I thought it would be a great opportunity for you." "A whole week away?" "You'll be representing the company, but also yourself, everything you've built here." Alice hesitated. "Is this your way of pushing me away?" Nicholas looked at her, surprised. "Of course not. Why would you think that?" "Because we haven't really talked since the party, because everything feels strange." Silence. "I just thought you needed space," he finally said. "And I thought you'd changed your mind about everything." "I never did. I just didn't know how to move forward without pressuring you." Alice stared at the floor. "Maybe I do need to travel, to think." Nicholas nodded. "If you decide to go, we'll support you." She left his office with a mind full of thoughts. She spent the rest of the day trying to ignore them. The next morning, she confirmed the trip. During the week away, Alice tried to focus on the event. She attended meetings, watched presentations, delivered her panels successfully. She received praise, made contacts, got invited to new projects. But despite all of that, she still felt like something was missing. Or rather, someone was missing. Every time something went well, she thought, Nicholas would like this. Every time she saw something funny, she thought, I wish I could tell him about this. She didn't send him any messages. He didn't send any either. But every day she checked her phone, hoping for a notification. On the last day of the trip, Emily called her on video. "I need to update you." "What happened?" "Nicholas is more serious than ever. He's too focused and quieter." "That's your fault." "I just went to work somewhere else for a week." "Exactly, and it feels like the whole company noticed." "Emily, what? What if I come back and nothing has changed?" "Then you deal with it, but at least you'll know you tried." Alice hung up and stared out the hotel window. The city was beautiful, but it felt too far away from everything that mattered. The following Monday, she returned to the office. She walked into the building with steady steps but a racing heart. The elevator felt slower than usual. When she reached her floor, she was greeted with hugs, smiles, and a few jokes. "The company was way too quiet without you," one colleague said. "I didn't think I made that much noise." It was the good kind of noise. When she got to her desk, she saw an envelope. It was a note. "You were missed. N." She held the paper for a few seconds. Then she carefully folded it and put it away. She felt an urge to run straight to Nicholas's office. But she didn't. Instead, she sat at her computer and took a deep breath. Alice tried to focus, organizing data for the new campaign, when something unusual caught her eye on the company calendar. Alignment meeting, creative team and CEO. Attendees, Alice Park. She frowned. It wasn't common to have a meeting with the CEO on a random Tuesday without prior notice, especially one that seemed to involve only her. She got up from her chair and walked to the meeting room where the conversation would take place. When she entered, Nicholas was already there, sitting at the table with 2 cups of coffee. "Hi, Alice," he said with a calm smile. "Have a seat for a moment." She sat down, a bit wary. "This doesn't feel like a normal meeting." "Because it's not. Actually, I just wanted to talk." She stayed silent, waiting. "I thought a lot about how to ask you here without making it seem awkward. But then I realized we've been through far more embarrassing situations than a simple invitation to talk." "I agree, especially if we think about lipsticks, bras, and car windows." They laughed together. It was funny how time made everything feel lighter. "The truth is, Alice, I really admire you, not just for what you do, but for how you do it. The way you think, the way you handle situations, the way you turn confusion into clarity. And I have to admit, over time this has started to feel more personal." She looked into his eyes. There was no hesitation in his voice, only sincerity. "I'm not someone who opens up easily," Nicholas continued, "but with you, it was different. And it made me realize that maybe it's time to stop overthinking things." Alice took a deep breath. She knew she had to say something too. "I spent a long time convincing myself that all of this was just part of work, that it was better pretend nothing was happening, that I didn't feel anything. But deep down, I knew. And if I stayed quiet for a while, it was just fear." Nicholas gave a small nod as if he understood. "Fear of what?" "That it was all in my head, that I was mistaking attention for interest, or compliments for affection. But now, I know better." She placed her hands on the table, a simple gesture, without drama. "I like you too, Nicholas." The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of meaning. "So," he said, resting his arms on the table, "what do we do now?" "Well, you're great at making plans. What do you suggest?" "That we take things slow, but that we don't pretend nothing is happening." Alice smiled. "That sounds fair. And maybe we could go out to dinner, not as colleagues, not as boss and employee, just as 2 adults trying to figure out what they're feeling. As long as it's not at one of those places where the menu has no prices." "I promise to pick a restaurant with readable prices," Alice laughed, "and no elevators for now." "Deal." Before she left the room, Nicholas handed her a small box. Alice opened it, expecting something formal, but inside was a keychain in the shape of a mirror, with an engraved phrase, "Warning, may contain lettuce and feelings." She started laughing before she even finished reading it. "Is this real?" "It is. Custom made." "You really took the joke all the way." "I prefer to think of it as style." Alice put the keychain in her bag with a big smile. "Can I say something?" "Of course. This is the corniest and sweetest thing I've ever received." Nicholas gave a small, satisfied bow. "My mission is complete." Alice stood up. "And now?" "Now you go back to work. I do too. And later I'll send you an address." "Promise it won't be a restaurant with a French name?" "CEO's word." Alice left the room feeling lighter. There was no kiss, no public declaration, but there was something even better. There was truth. The months that followed were nothing like Alice had imagined a relationship would be. She and Nicholas took things slow. A dinner here, a walk there. Nothing grand at first. And maybe that's what made it so good. At work, they kept things professional. But it was impossible not to notice the knowing glances, the quiet smiles, and the strategically timed messages. Alice would laugh to herself when she found notes stuck to her computer screen that said things like, "Meeting at 11 a.m., bring coffee and smiles," or "Emergency plan, lunch together, bring your appetite and your charm." Emily, of course, knew everything, but she respected their space. Every now and then, she'd just comment with a knowing smile, "You two hide it well, but not that well." Alice felt like life was finally falling into place. No more doubts, no more fears. She felt secure and loved. Nicholas, on the other hand, seemed lighter. He still worked with the same dedication as always, but now there was a different spark in his eyes. A kind of peace that only someone who has found what they were looking for can have. Weekends became just for them. A museum visit here, a walk in the park there, a disastrous recipe attempt in the kitchen. They'd laugh at their mistakes and celebrate their small victories, like successfully putting together an entire piece of furniture without losing their patience. Alice discovered that Nicholas knew how to make pancakes, and that he loved bad sci-fi movies. Nicholas discovered that Alice collected mugs with funny quotes and that she talked to herself when she was nervous. One day, while watching the two of them walking hand in hand in the park, an elderly man approached and said, "When love is simple, it lasts longer." They just smiled because that was exactly how they felt. Simple love, yet full of meaning. A few months later, Nicholas invited Alice for a weekend out of town. He said he needed to disconnect for a bit and knew a peaceful place. Alice agreed, thinking it was just a small trip. She packed comfortable clothes, having no idea what was waiting for her. They arrived at a charming wooden cabin, surrounded by trees and overlooking a lake. Everything was calm, quiet. Time seemed to move slower there. On the second day, Nicholas suggested a boat ride. Alice, who had never been on a boat before, hesitated, but she agreed. In the middle of the lake, with the sun turning the water golden, Nicholas stopped rowing. "It's so beautiful," she said, looking around. "I waited for the right moment to do this," he replied, reaching into his pocket. Alice turned to him and saw a small blue velvet box. "Nicholas?" "I didn't prepare a long speech because everything I want to say you already know. I admire you, I respect you, and I love you. More than I ever thought I could love someone. You changed everything. You taught me to laugh at my mistakes, to not take myself so seriously, to believe that a simple life can still be extraordinary." He opened the box, a simple ring, but with just enough sparkle to bring tears to her eyes. "Alice Park, will you marry me?" She covered her mouth with her hand, laughed, then cried, "Yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, and there, in the middle of the lake, with the world completely silent, they held each other. No fireworks, no audience, just a yes, and that was everything. The wedding took place 3 months later. It was on a quiet beach at sunset. Alice wore a light dress, her hair loose in the wind, and a smile she couldn't hide. Nicholas wore a white shirt, calm on the outside, but his eyes were more emotional than ever. Emily was there, of course, and she cried before the ceremony even started. Close friends, co-workers, and family gathered for a simple ceremony, full of meaning. As Alice walked toward Nicholas, she didn't think about tripping, or the wind in her hair, or what others were seeing. She only thought about how, in that walk, she was moving toward the love she had always dreamed of, even when she thought she didn't deserve it. Nicholas held her hands firmly. "Today, I promise to make you laugh even on the hard days," he said, his voice trembling. "And I promise never to adjust my bra in a car window again," she replied, making everyone laugh. They exchanged vows, rings, and a kiss that sealed not just their love, but the journey that had brought them there. The reception was light-hearted, filled with music, dancing, and inside jokes. Nicholas took off his shoes right at the start. Alice received a new mug with the inscription, "The Lady of the Mirror and the Lettuce." They ran to the ocean and dipped their feet in the water, because that's how they did everything, with lightness and a touch of adventure. A few months later, Alice prepared a surprise. She waited for Nicholas to come home from work. She was nervous, her hands sweaty, holding a simple package. "I got you something," she said, handing it to him. He opened it, curious. It was a t-shirt. On the front, the words, "Dad in Training." Nicholas went silent. Then he looked at her. His eyes filled with tears. "Really?" Alice nodded, tears forming in her own eyes. 2 months. He pulled her into a tight hug, laughed, then cried, then laughed again. "You're joking?" "I'm not. There's a little heartbeat here, half mine, half yours. This is... He tried to speak but couldn't. He kissed her forehead, then her barely noticeable belly. "This is the best gift of my life." Better than pancakes? So much better. They stayed there, holding each other, feeling the love between them. What did you think of Alice and Nicholas's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What's your score? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories, and check out more emotional stories by clicking here on the final screen.